Danny Steeves, and I am so thrilled to be back for my fourth season of, of, of doing this show for you. And today we have a very special guest joining us from Kitchener, Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. Kelly Meissner is a driving force between of Kate Kause. So she is the mother of Kate, and Kate lives with Angelman Syndrome. So she actually designed a wheelchair accessible park a few years ago. So we're here to talk about that. Welcome to Possibility, Kelly.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
No problem. So, I wonder if you might start off by sharing a little bit about your story and how you came up with this idea.
Sure, no problem. Our daughter Kate was born in June 2009, and by her first year, it was pretty obvious that she wasn't meeting some milestones. So we pursued a diagnosis with a local family doctor and then a pediatric neurologist. And by June 2010, we were tested for Angelman syndrome, and that was confirmed positive in August 2010. So Kate lives with Angelman syndrome, and it's a significant disability. We were told she may not walk and she might not have very much verbal language, but she does really, really well. She can walk, and she's using an augmentative and alternative communication device in order to communicate with the world. And then she's also such a great multimodal communicator. She's very expressive in other ways, like we like to see with lots of language. And she lives with a seizure disorder, but we're lucky right now her seizures are really well controlled, and she lives an amazing life. With Angelman syndrome, things can be really complicated. It's typically a significant intellectual disability, but we know that Kate understands everything that she hears. It's just about how can she get that message out to us. So we're working hard to make sure that it's that the technology is actually helping her deliver her message. It's not really Kate's that's the barrier, it's the technology that's the barrier. So we're working hard to make sure she will have communication. That's our ultimate goal here, and to make sure she grows up in a very accessible environment and well-supported environment.
It sounds like you are doing a great job as a mother and as a caregiver as well, but I'm curious to know, are there any barriers that Kate faces on a daily basis that keeps her from living the life she wants to live?
Yeah, good question, Danny. I feel like Kate's constantly has faces barriers every day. She needs a lot of help with self-care. So she needs help to eat her food. Like we have to spoon feed her. She can pick up things by hand. She's got a little bit of motor control there, but anything like, spaghetti, which is one of her favorite things, cheesecake, rice pudding, yogurt, all of that stuff we have to help her with. We help her with her toileting. She can't do that by herself or without direct support.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to do.
And do you have care support coming in, or do you do it all yourself?
We have an awesome situation set up here. I actually live right beside my sister, and so that's really helpful because our two families support each other. And then my in-laws actually live nearby too, and so do my parents. So we're all kind of in this nice tight little area in Elmira, and it's really kind of lovely. We also have a caregiver from the Lynn support too. We have like 28 hours a month of support. Yeah.
So I'm curious. You said that Kate was born in 2011, was it?
2009.
2009. Sorry.
Okay.
When you were carrying her, were there any signs of a disability forming, or was that a surprise for you?
It was 100% a surprise. All of the prenatal stuff that we go through, just so you can see that 12-week ultrasound, that was all clear. It wouldn't have mattered to me anyways, though. It's when we signed up to be parents, we signed up for whatever that looks like, and we're proud to be parents of Kate. So we didn't know until afterwards.
And what was your you basically already answered this, but I'll ask it in a different way. What was your reaction when you found out Kate was disabled?
I think, honestly, it was when we got the confirmation of the diagnosis, it actually felt a bit better. The unknown was the hard part. The unknown of, we didn't know what we were facing was scarier. And then once we had the diagnosis, it was like, okay, now we can move on. And having that information was really quite powerful. And then it's almost like it was a big turning point in my life. We took the diagnosis and it's like, that's it, we're moving on. And it was so great to close that uncertain chapter of our lives, to know what we need to do and help her.
And do you have other children, or just Kate?
Kate has an older brother, Jameson, who is 12.
So how did he react when Kate came along?
He was, you know what, he's always had this amazing spirit about him. And I'm not sure if it's because he has a sister who lives with a disability or not, but my son, Jameson, we call him Jamie for short, is one of the most emotionally and mature, gifted people I've ever met. He accepts everybody for who they are. And I think that that's actually just who he is personally. It's funny how things work out, but he was meant to be with us to help us on this journey for sure.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now a lot of people don't know this, but you actually started a non-for-profit organization called Kause. So can you share about that a little bit?
You betcha. We started Kate's Kause. The idea actually came about probably within a week of Kate's diagnosis. I felt like we wanted to do something for the community that would really help Kate grow up in an accepted environment. So the playground was kind of my first initial reaction, because Kate was only a year old at that point. So I figured if the kids around her grew up with her the way she was and would accept her for who she was, that would be better in the long run. So by November 2010, we had established Kate's Kause as a not-for-profit. And then we raised funds, $350,000, to build the accessible playground in Elmira. in 2012. And then 5 years later, in 2017, we got official charity status, which was a really big deal. It was hard.
Wow, that was great. What, I'm curious, what made you want to start the accessible playground in the first place?
I really felt like one of the best things that we can do for kids to help them feel included, and this is any kid. It doesn't necessarily mean someone living with a disability, but anybody just needs to be just needs to interact through play, something that's very simple and easy. And since Kate was so young, I didn't want her to miss out on those early opportunities to have social interaction. So that's where I started with the playground. And we have lots of playgrounds within walking distance to our house, but a lot of them, like one of them has a base of wood chips, and the other has a base of stones. And like at that point, Kate was still really oral motor functioning. She was putting lots of stuff in her mouth. And so stones and wood chips are like not a good walking flooring for sure, but they're also a choking hazard.
So you actually, like, I've been to the park a few times, and you actually have a great padding system for the ground. Can you talk about that as well?
You bet you. I'd love to talk about that because some people don't know this, but the surfacing, that's rubberized surfacing, there are 90,000 recycled tires in that ground.
Really?
So it's an amazing, really great way to reuse the rubber, right? So we chose a company that actually does a fair amount of recycling of the tires, and I loved that idea. And it was a little bit more expensive, that flooring because of that, but we wanted to make sure it was a little bit more environmentally sustainable too. What a great way to reuse rubber tires, right?
Yeah.
Make the world more accessible.
Absolutely. Now, for someone who hasn't been to the park,
I think I lost you.
I have viewers all over the world because I put this on YouTube. So can you explain what kind of things you have available at the park?
You bet. So one of the things Danny just mentioned was the accessible flooring, the rubberized surfacing that's really easy for everybody to navigate, which I really love. It's really also great for kids that might stumble a little bit or fall. It's actually a really great surface to actually fall off of a playground, and kids fall. So that's a pretty good thing to have there. We also have a roller slide, which looks like kind of like those little, like a milk carton, the way a milk carton thing would move at a grocery store. And the reason we have a roller slide is because regular plastic slides and metal slides can actually build up a fair amount of friction as the child slides down. And that electricity there that gets generated could interfere with some pacemakers, whether they be heart pacemakers, whether they be hearing aids, whether they even be a bladder pacemaker. So we wanted to make sure that there's an alternative for kids. Plus, it's an awesome sensory experience. And then one of the things that we really tried to make sure that there's lots of physical access, that there's like transfer stations where we can help kids and adults get out of wheelchairs and transfer onto the equipment. But there's also lots of swinging and sliding and sensory opportunities, because I feel like a lot of the time what a lot of us need, and you don't have to live with a disability to appreciate the sensation of swinging, is such a great thing for our sensory complex in our nervous system. So we wanted to make sure that there's lots of opportunity for that, because I think that that's something that, 20 years ago, lots of kids living with disabilities were prevented from experiencing that swinging sensation. So we wanted to make sure there's lots of sensory stuff there. We also have a sandbox, which is hugely popular It's the kids love that. And there's an accessible digger. There's like dinosaur bones dug down into the sand so kids can dig them up. There's an accessible sand table, which is really great because we're hitting lots of great sensory needs and physical needs in that sandbox. And then we also have a custom built sensory wall that's a climbing wall, but then there's all kinds of great features. There's lots of sensory experiences right on the sensory wall as well. And then in 2014, we put in the first accessible zip line in an Ontario playground. So that's pretty exciting. And that thing gets a lot of use by kids and adults alike.
I just want to congratulate you because you are one of two accessible playgrounds that I know of in the world. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Now, what I'm really excited about is you actually are starting a wheelchair accessible washroom in the next little bit. Can you share about that as well?
You bet. I think this is really, really an important piece for us. Whether you live with a disability or not, it's really having access to facilities is a big dignity piece, right?
Yeah,
so
because sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
But washrooms are my biggest pet peeve.
I hear you. I know exactly what you mean.
Because for me, as you can see, I'm in a wheelchair and washrooms are not my friend because you in order for me to use them, you have to lay me down on the floor and then take my brief off and whatever, and it's just not sanitary at all. So I am really excited because you are actually going to have an adult change tables. So
you bet.
Good on you.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that from you, Danny. It really matters to hear what people's lived experiences are. And I think that while an accessible washroom doesn't sound as exciting and flashy to lots of other people, it means a lot to people like you and me. We really need to appreciate that just because we live with a disability doesn't mean that we shouldn't have dignified access to toileting needs. And I really think that this is one thing that's going to change the game. As a carer who, like, we struggle taking Kate to a bathroom, right? And I'm often like crouched, as you described, somebody is on the floor. So if I've got her sitting on a toilet, I'm crouched in a tiny, tiny stall right in front of her in a deep squat, which I can't maintain for very long. And it's just it's not functional for the person who needs the support or the person who's providing it. We need to make sure we're taking care of each other. That's why we really feel like at one of the most accessible places in our township, Kate's Place for Everyone, we should have an accessible washroom with a universal stall. And that really means that adult change table needs to be there. You've got the nail on the head right there.
So, are you just gonna have an adult change table, or are you just gonna have a lift as well? I'm just curious.
Good question. You know what? I hadn't thought of that. So this will be a good thing for us to look at as we're looking at the design, that we can consult with people like you would be a great example, and some of the community living organizations, to make sure that we're actually getting what we need in that washroom. Because it's my perception that matters.
because I know that there are a few people, myself included, that need a lift, and not very many public washrooms have lifts or even adult change tables. So good on you for thinking of that.
Thanks, Danny, and I appreciate your help on that. That's really going to be important.
So okay, I'm curious to find out a little bit more about Angelman Syndrome. Like, what does that entail?
Sure. Kate is, when you live with Angelman Syndrome, there's a small deletion on chromosome 15, and it's an enzyme that actually codes, it's a gene that codes for an enzyme called ubiquitin ligase. And what that does in our brains is it actually cleans up, after neurons interact, it actually cleans up at that synaptic cleft spot. So it's where two neurons are connecting and sharing a message. This enzyme is supposed to come up and tidy that area up. And she's missing that, like she has a non-functioning one. We're not sure how much of it that she's missing. The deletion could be big or small. But because it's one of the genetically imprinted genes, that means that it has to be expressed in the brain and in the spinal cord from Kate's maternal chromosome 15. So that would be the chromosome 15 that I gave her. And even though there's probably a healthy copy on the paternal chromosome, the gene requires that it's expressed in the brain and the spinal cord by the mother's version, which is a bit unfortunate because other spots in the body will express ubiquitin ligase off of the paternal copy. Right. So it's a good candidate for gene therapy. I care about the science a bit because I'm a science teacher and I did a master's degree in neuroscience.
You are a science teacher?
Yeah. I teach high school physics. So I'm a little bit interested in how all of the mechanics of that work, right? Yeah. So because of that, it seems like it's a small, tiny deletion, but it's a significant one that actually makes it really hard for, I guess, how do I describe it? It's like Kate's got a little bit of a praxia. So in the sense that she, her brain is sending the message, but she can't deliver it to her body in time. So that it would give an elicited response that the rest of the world would think is timely. So very often, like, we can ask Kate a question, and because we don't get a response right away, people tend to like move on. You know what?
Same.
Right? Yeah. Whereas if you just wait, the response comes, right? So sometimes there's a delayed reaction and Kate's nodding her head and people have already kind of moved on. So we're working hard to train everybody else to wait for Kate instead of getting Kate to, have to adjust to everybody else.
So Kate is not verbal at all?
She says like 2 words. She says mom because she's awesome daughter. So that's really great. And then the other word that we heard really clearly, and this is going to sound funny, but last Christmas we watched Lord of the Rings when it was really snowy. And Kate says orc really clearly. So that's a bit strange, but funny. So we hear her make lots of consonant sounds, like you could hear her kind of like struggle with the word good. Like she'll be like, "Guh." It's kind of there, like it's on its way, but it's like can't finish the sentence through. Or she'll almost like imitate the pitch of "I love you" or something like that, right? So when we say, I love you, should be like, ah, like it's the same kind of response back.
Yeah.
She does a fair amount of that.
So,
And she's really expressive with her face, and she's got a head nod and a head shake. So that's,
awesome.
yeah.
Is is she is she in a wheelchair?
Oh, sorry, Danny, I cut you cut out there.
Is is she in a wheelchair or can she walk around?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I got you now. Did you ask if she's in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
Yeah, she has 2 wheelchairs. They're mostly used for transportation to and from school.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we just bought one from a friend because you know how bulky and heavy they are, right?
Yeah.
So we got one passed down to us from a friend that is a titanium alloy that's really lightweight, so I can put it in the car easily. Kate can do like a 2 or 3 kilometer walk, but after that she tires really easily. So we have to have options for
Of
her.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna switch gears because you brought up a topic that I want to talk about.
Sure.
See, this is why I don't prepare questions because I never know where the interview is gonna go. Because, anyway, but you mentioned Kate goes Kate goes to school. So what does that look like for her?
That is a really good question. So we live in Elmira, which is rural, like you would appreciate living in Listowel, right? So we there's not very many options for places for her. So she actually goes to her regular neighborhood school and attends a regular classroom, and that is really, really challenging. But it's turning out to become super rewarding, not just for Kate, but for the kids that are around her. So she rides the bus every day, gets dropped off, and she has beautiful supports. She's got great direct support. Her teacher is amazing, and the EAs that have worked with her have been fabulous. So I think through that, lots of people have learned what inclusion and acceptance of diversity really, really means.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that because what when I don't know if this is like where you live, but here in Mexico, they actually went to full inclusion. They don't actually have the disabled classroom anymore here in Mexico.
Wow.
So what is your reaction to full inclusion?
I love inclusion. I think what the inclusion situation has done for Kate is it has made her better. It's made everybody better, but it's definitely made her better in the sense that she is meeting milestones and maximizing her potential way better because she's learning from other kids. And that's just such a natural thing. So we really advocate for inclusion. And I feel like sometimes when people ask me, well, don't you think a segregated class or a congregated class with everybody who's using the same even communication device might be better for her? I always say that imperfect inclusion is better than perfect segregation. And I think that the world has shown us that when we segregate, things don't work out very well. And that's been amongst any population. That is not just kids who live with an intellectual disability.
Right, yeah. But I do think you had, sorry, but this is my own opinion. I do think you had look at inclusion on a person-to-person basis because not all people are the same.
Yeah, very good point, right? I'm really looking forward to a spot in education where we can get to this point where the family is really included as part of the decision for the student, and that the student is included in their decision in the placement making. And that's more person centered. I'd love to see that more person centered review. Like, just like you said, it's life is different for everybody, and having the option for choice instead of being stuffed one path
Yeah.
is way better.
So what has your experience been with the school board in having kids involved?
It's been pretty amazing, especially since we've got a really good teacher right now that Kate has, who really understands.
Yeah.
Like, she just really seems to understand the equity piece, and that Kate's allowed to have certain things provided for her. So over time, it's been a learning curve for everybody, but things have gotten better and better. So Kate now has, because all of the kids have like Chromebooks in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
So Kate has a fully accessible Chromebook and a beautiful touch screen that's not too shiny because the glare would actually distract her. So it's like a matte finish on the screen. And she's got a couple of accessible, those buttons, like accessible buttons, so that she can interact with her computer, which is a Chromebook, so it looks like everybody else's.
Yeah.
And then she's got a massive accessible mouse. It's so cool. It's like taking a regular mouse and inverting it. And so she can put her hand right on, like a trackball.
Yeah. I have one too, actually.
You know what I mean, then. That's good. And so Kate just finished grade 4, and it's taken a long time to get to that point to figure out what does she need, what does the inclusion look like, and what does the equity piece look like. So now in the classroom, when the kids are doing their Chromebook stuff, it looks very similar. Kate is doing different work, but it's her work, and that to me is a really great example of inclusion and equity, because everybody is getting what they need at the time that they need it.
Yeah. One more school question for you. What do you think Kate's life will be like when she gets to the age of high school?
Oh, good question, Danny. This one keeps me up late at night worrying. It's really, really tough, right? I really hope that Kate will give us some indication of what she wants. I teach at a high school, so I know what kinds of programming is available in our school board for her. I would like her to have the chance to make a choice. We've worked really hard to keep her with her friends, her typically aged peers, all throughout her schooling. And if that's something that she wants to do when it's time for grade 9, then that's something we will help her do. If she wants to go to a specialized program, we will let her. We're kind of hoping she'll be able to help us make that choice, because I'm too stressed out with that responsibility, and I really want that to be driven by Kate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, we're almost out of time. So
okay.
I just have a few more questions on camera, and then we can talk a bit off camera as well.
Good.
Going forward with the park, what would you like to see in the future? Like, where do you see it going?
So with our playground, we we've got a small renovation that's happening at the end of the summer. We're going to actually move the sandbox to a different location because the sand is actually spilling into the accessible merry-go-round structure, and it's interfering with the gears. So we're going to move the sandbox, keep it accessible, so there'll be a path that takes you to the sandbox. And in the sandbox current spot, we're adding some more sensory elements, and they're musical elements, and they're gorgeous. I love them. Can't wait for them to appear. And then of course the washroom is our big goal. That space, I think, once we get the washroom in place, is kind of going to be pretty full. So it'll be our goal to continue to maintain, maybe upgrade and swap things out as necessary. But that space will be pretty full. The township of Woolwich tell me that they're going to try and remodel some other playgrounds in the area. So I really feel like that's really cool because they are responding to how busy and important the accessibility is at Kate's Place.
Yeah. How like, is the washroom gonna be in a building, or what? Like, what is it gonna look like?
Here, I should bring you with me. I'm gonna go grab I have a sketch I'm gonna show you.
Yeah.
You're gonna come with me. I just don't want to lose you here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab it. I'm going into a dark area here.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a building, and yeah, there's my face. It's gonna be a full building, and it'll have like regular stalls and then a universal design stall. And there will also be water fountains inside as well, the refillable water station. So the building, when you see, will look like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, and then it'll be locked remotely. So we're going to make sure that there's mechanisms in place that the township can lock it remotely to keep it safe at night and shut it down when necessary, right? So it's
awesome.
Full building. It's almost $200,000, and but a lot of that is built into the need of keeping it accessible.
What gave you this idea in the first place for the accessible washroom?
I think there's those porta potties there right now.
Yeah.
I won't go in them. And I often say to people who will say, why don't you just put more porta potties at the playground? I'm like, have you ever tried to change like a 15-year-old kid in a porta potty? Like, that's not pleasant for anybody. And it's actually a massive dignity piece.
Yeah.
So I really feel like when I think of my family, if we're going to the park for a while, we have to make sure Kate is toileted at home because we can't leave very easily. Or if we are leaving, we're packing up and we're gone.
Absolutely.
And I don't want people to pack up and leave. I want to make this easier on families like us. I want families to have an awesome regular day at the park where all of their needs are met.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you say, I come up with more questions.
That's funny. We're very like-minded.
because this is awesome. Like, what is your reaction to you already answered this, but I want to hear more. What is your reaction to public washrooms? Because not many public washrooms are wheelchair accessible. So can you talk more about that?
I think you probably know exactly what I mean when I say that you have to really plan out your day. know where the washroom spots are. And I'm really hoping that by modeling this for the community and for our region, we will really kind of demonstrate this is the kind of accessibility that everybody needs. It's something that we need to make sure we're taking care of our population who needs the physical access, and we're taking care of the population that's giving the direct support. I really think it's really important to change the game here. And I think that's the message that I've learned from building the playground, is that other people, they come on board once they see it. So I'm kind of hoping that I get the accessibility piece right on this washroom, so that other places will follow suit. I know it's not easy, and I know there's a lot of public facilities that are well established, and it costs lots of money to do these repairs and upgrades.
Absolutely.
But I think that as a community, we've got to realize that we need to take care of each other. And like I said before, it's a washroom doesn't sound flashy and as exciting as a playground, but you know it's going to be so well used, and you know it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, but it's funny that you bring that up, because I was out in public the other day, and I always struggle with accessible washrooms, because not like I keep saying, it sounds like a broken record, but not every place is wheelchair accessible. And I was at Parkwood Hospital in Kitchener the other day, and
Yeah.
and my mom went in the washroom, and she said, "Man, it's big, and there should be a adult change table in there." But the lady who I was meeting with said, you would be surprised on how little it will get used. It will only get used every 5 years. And I was like, no.
No, yeah, no doubt. It's funny what people think.
Yeah.
But you know what? Even if that were true, even if it was used minimally, the fact that it's there is good enough for me.
Yeah.
It needs to be there for the people who need it, whatever that looks like. And I think it's completely excluding populations if we just don't bother, right? And that's not the world we live in.
Two more questions that
Sure.
I can think of camera, on camera. I mean, when you take Kate out in public, what is people's reaction to her? Like, do they ever act? In a negative way, or is it usually pretty positive?
That's a really good question. Overall, I think people are pretty positive. I think we try to work really hard to make sure that if we see like kids kind of staring, and parents usually try and say, "Oh, don't stare, don't." And I'm like, no, let's open the conversation. Let's have a talk, right? Like, so I always try and model that being welcome is a better option. But there have been times where one really, really hard time, actually, when we were in Florida. We were in a pool in Florida, and a little boy turned to his parents and asked if Kate was a real girl. And I was so shocked. I feel like I let her down in that moment, because I was so shocked I didn't react properly, because I can't imagine anybody ever thinking that. And the parents kind of just whisked the kid away. And that was kind of the end of it. And then Kate swam over to me and just hung on and gave me a hug. And I kept apologizing to her because I feel like I didn't do a good job. Our experiences are so usually positive, and I really try and go out with a mindset that people might stare, but it's going to be an opportunity to provide some education for them. But there are sometimes those offshoots that really dig deep and really hurt.
Speaking as a mother, why do you think when people are out in public and they see someone with a disability, why do kids scare at people just because they're different? Or the better question is, why do people whisk their child away when they see someone with a disability?
Yeah, that's such a really good point, right? I feel like we're at one of those big turning points in our history and in our world where people are getting more access, so the population is able to be out in public, which is really good. I think part of the problem is that even parents who are my age or even a little bit older may not have gone to school with kids like Kate, because they were isolated and segregated. Some were even sent to institutions. So I think that because they didn't grow up with it, that is kind of reflecting out amongst their kids too, right? So that's why it's really important, as long as Kate's okay with it, that she is out there in the public and modeling how awesome it is to be herself and to have that self-confidence, because she is super confident. She loves being herself and she loves her life. And I think that there's a lot that other people can learn from that. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of that kind of, oh, we must look away or we must avoid somebody being a little bit different is all built into our roots of history. And I think probably the same kind of stuff could be similar for lots of different things, like skin color and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
That it's strange to me, because I've never been, I don't know. I always saw people as people. Doesn't matter, right? Nothing else matters. People are people, and that's not hard to figure out. So that's the message that we really want to put out.
Great job, Kelly.
Thanks.
I always ask this as my last question. As a parent with a disability, as a mother with someone with a disability, what would your message be to someone else whose child has a disability?
That's a really good one. I really want to make sure that people feel like their life can still be amazing. I feel like some parents really struggle thinking that it's not the life that they had planned on, but you can't plan for anything in life. And Kate has made me a better person, or help pull out that person that I will always wanted to be. She brought that out in me. And I think our experiences, because of Kate, our life is so much brighter and so much more exciting. And we have challenges. There's some challenging times for sure.
Yeah.
but then the victories are massive. Like there's so many times that I feel so lifted up and so grateful that I get to spend this time with this kid.
We all face challenges. So, uh, how can we educate people about disabilities, in your opinion?
I do a lot of that. I'm lucky because I'm a teacher, so I do a fair amount of that
Yeah.
in my classroom. I teach science, but we do a fair amount about talking about the history of human populations, and it's not just people with disabilities. It's the way we treat everybody.
Sorry, what grade do you teach?
I 11, 12, and 10. Yeah, I haven't talked.
And how do they react when you talk about disability?
They are very positive. I actually feel like even the language that I'm hearing from high school students nowadays, there's less disability slurs than maybe even 10 years ago. So I feel like we're making some good headway. That's been our experience. And then when I'm out in the community, I'm just always trying to model it and see every opportunity that I can to help educate a person, right? And like one time when we were at a movie a couple years ago, a woman came up to us and said, "Oh, what's wrong with your daughter?" And so I redirected that and said, "There's nothing wrong with her. There's lots of things right with her." And you just have to take those moments to educate people.
Yeah.
Right? And one person at a time, that's good for me. Like I feel like even if it's one at a time, it's good.
And I'll share more about this off camera because we're running out of time here. But that is why I am doing this show, because I think there is a stigma about people with disabilities that really needs to stop.
Absolutely. It's so important you're doing this, Danny. It's really, really good. Well done.
So thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Kelly.
Oh, it's an honor. Thanks for having me, Danny. I really appreciate it.
And if people want to find out more about the park, how can they do that?
We are accessible online really easily at kateskause.com, and those are both spelled with K's. Okay. And we also have a Facebook page, okay. Kate's Cause.
So, if you want more information, you can go kateskause.com, right? So,
yeah.
So thank you very much for joining us today, and yeah, we'll keep following this story at possibilities, and maybe have you back on.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Danny.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
So, if you want to get in touch with me, my email address is possibilitieshow@gmail.com, and as I always say, keep the gift out of disability. Have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.